Now, I want to have a quick talk about assumptions. As a lot of you will be aware, the council bases its decision making on what's called the LTFP, the Long-Term Financial Plan. Basically, it's a 10-year budget for a council. Now, that's full of assumptions. We've got to assume what's going to happen to staff wages. It's about 30% of your expenditure. We've got to make assumptions about what's going to happen to the increases to costs for materials and contracts and other things that council has to purchase, such as the insurance and electricity that I just spoke about. Now, that's really difficult to do. It's difficult to do because there's a couple of different measures of inflation that I've talked about before. The CPI, which you all know about, but that's a basket of household goods. There's another thing called the Producer Price Index, the PPI, and there's a particular component of that index called the Civil Engineering Construction Sub-Index, and that's gone up about 9%, much, much higher than CPI. But predicting the future is a mug's game. The only thing I can predict about predicting the future is that I will be wrong and anyone else that tries to do it will be wrong. Although I am always happy to declare that I predicted a period of high inflation and low growth right at the beginning of the COVID response. We overcompensated, we crushed productivity, we monetarized debt, and economic theory tells us that that results in extremely high inflation for a long period of time and eventually low growth as we have to put in public policy responses to the inflation. However, I'm getting off the topic. Consider the RBA, the nation's central bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia. Consider a couple statements they made, and you can check these up on the internet yourself. In November last year, they told us in no uncertain terms that inflation would be transitory. Now, that was completely and absolutely wrong. Any economist who has studied economics carefully, and particularly what happened during the 70s, knew that that wouldn't happen. In December, just a month later, they said, okay, inflation will be peaking about 2.5% in 2023, or be back to 2.5% in 2023. Last week, they released their monetary statement when they released their decision about the cash rate. And last week, they told us that inflation would be peaking at just over 7.75%. Now, the central bank has got this badly wrong. And that makes our job really, really difficult because it's hard for us to go against what the central bank's saying. But if people like I am correct that inflation will be higher, it will be stickier, and will take longer to dissipate, well then the assumptions in our long-term financial plan are probably painting a rosier picture than what will actually be the outcomes that we experience. Now, that's why I prefer option 2. There's far more chance of something happening, a downside risk, something bad happening, than a pleasant, wonderful surprise where inflation just suddenly disappears in 2023 like the RBA is hoping for. So I like option 2 because it gives the council the flexibility to respond to these downside risks.